This is Douglas Noble on behalf of the NABWT History and Legacy Project, and today we're interviewing John Williams of Los Angeles, a longtime member of the Los Angeles chapter before it expired, and a participant on the national level for at least the last 10 years. John was co-chair of the Los Angeles chapter for several years. He was also the first speaker of the NABWT House of Delegates, and he is now, and has been for the last several years, one of the two prime facilitators for the Multiracial Multicultural Institute, which is the major substantive program of the NABWT. Good afternoon, John.
Hello.
When did you first join the Los Angeles chapter?
Oh, wow. I cannot believe it, but it has been it's almost 15 years. It was the fall of 1987. And somehow I had confided in a friend from the Los Angeles Junior Chamber of Commerce about my proclivities, and she recommended, she had heard somehow, I still don't know to this day how she heard of this organization called Black and White Men Together. And she knew that they met at the Gay and Lesbian Center, and that's all she knew. And I think I called the center and found out that they met on Saturday evenings and just took myself there. So that's how I got involved.
What was your motivation for going other than that someone told you about it?
I had come out really fully to myself that fall and knew for whatever reason that I had interracial attraction. So I was looking for a place where there were other people like mine.
What was your first meeting like, if you remember?
I don't know if I remember the details about exactly what the topic was and all of that, but I do remember feeling kind of excited. In the old Gay and Lesbian Center on Highland, there were, first of all, it was 2 levels, and we always met on the second level in rooms that adjoined each other. And it was just a very interesting space. It was full of men, and there were in that time we attracted in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 men each week that came to check them out, and they were different ages, and I just remember feeling kind of excited about walking in the room, kind of on exhibit to a certain extent, but felt that this was what I was looking for.
Do you remember some of the people that were at that first meeting?
Well, seeing that I had a short liaison with at least one person, there was, of course now I forget his name, but I remember him. I think at my first meeting, both Phil Wilson and Chris Brownlee were there. I'm not absolutely sure. I know this was a period where they were still coming to meetings.
Well, it was when Phil and I were co-chairs.
Okay, well then,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I remember you. Those are the people that stood out the most at first.
What was your impression of that meeting? And you say the topic. This was the Saturday night raps that we had.
Right. Again, I don't remember what the topic was, but what I remember about that period was the meetings had a certain energy to them. And there were actually 2 rooms. There was the main room where we usually started the meetings, and then there was the smaller room which had rises on it, so it kind of created this pit atmosphere where sometimes we'd have an alternative rap. And that was I wouldn't call it a romantic room, but it definitely had a different ambience than the main room. And so some men would go over there, but we'd all come back at the end of like 90 minutes or so, and then go out to eat afterwards. And we went to this, I'm not sure if we went to Sizzler then, or there was this other place called Flaming Patties or the Yukon Mining Company. What I remember about all of that is that there was a lot of camaraderie, and it felt like a community.
What Did you attend any of the other chapter events?
No, I didn't get involved in any other chapter with BWT until I took a road trip.
I'm sorry, if I misspoke, did you attend any other events of the LA chapter besides the RAPS?
Not initially. I think it was the RAPS first. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the first non-RAP event I went to. I don't know if it was Ramon's Halloween party. I don't think I went to the Halloween party in '87. Or maybe the Memorial Day barbecue or something like that that I went to, but I don't remember a lot about. My memories really center around the RAPS themselves.
Now, did you at some point facilitate the RAPS?
Yeah, I think I started getting involved with the RAPS around, in terms of facilitating, back in 88 or 89, probably 88, and seemed to be successful there. Again, it was an interesting period because we had so many people coming, and there seems to be so much to talk about. Other people that just flashed to me were Patrick Ball and his other half. Who's his other half? Scott Provencher. Remember them? And I remember them because they were also very active in the RAPS. When I think of the energy being provided, I think of some of the people that were responsible for providing that. So those two names came back to me. But yeah, I started with the RAPS in around 88.
What were, if you remember, what were some of the RAP topics in those days?
Well, in putting together the calendar, what I do remember, and I should have brought maybe some newsletters with me, because we always listed them in the newsletter. I don't have those in front of me. But we took care to strike a balance between what we call the social versus the political. So even then, there was that whole balancing act between whether or not we'd be too serious versus more lighter topics that people felt comfortable with. So we would talk a lot about relationships. I don't know. I tended to do more of the heavy-duty routes rather than the lighter ones. I'm trying to think who was my co-facilitator, because we actually had a facilitation group that we kind of counted on to do the routes. So I wasn't the only one.
Now, at some point, you became co-chair of the chapter, right?
Around 1990.
Right. And who was your co-chair?
Renee was for part of the time. I forget who my first co-chair was.
Renee Seidel.
Yeah, Renee Seidel. I forget who the other co-chair was with me. I blank. You remember?
I'm not being interviewed.
Sorry. No, I remember, because we staggered them then, even then.
Yeah.
So I remember Renee, myself and Renee serving together.
And you did that for, what, a year?
About a year, yeah. I was RAP co-chair for a year, and we when I think back, we were fairly well organized in that regard, because we used to have training sessions, we used to have real planning groups, as we were, sitting down with the steering committee to plan out all the activities, so it was very organized. Really.
And after you were co-chair, you continued involvement on some level with the local chapter?
Yeah. At that point, I had also started doing some national stuff, too. You alluded to, that was a period where I was on the National Association Planning Committee, Long Range Planning Committee, which was the group that came up with the idea of having the House of Delegates. And I think it was I know I participated on the committee in 91. So I think we had our
You mean the group that came up with the idea of speakers
right.
for the House?
The House of Delegates and the speakers, right. That whole system.
Well, the House already existed.
I'm sorry, the speakers.
Yeah.
Okay, the speakers, because we wanted to really give the general members a real voice at the convention, the annual convention.
Now, had you gone to a national convention before you became a member of the Long Range Planning Committee, or not?
I think I had. I think I got involved as a result of my first convention in 1990 in San Francisco. It was the 10th anniversary. And that was a very special convention because I'd never been to San Francisco. Well, I'd been to San Francisco before on road trips with with selected members of the chapter, but I'd never been to a convention, so to have the convention there was very, very interesting.
What were your impressions of that convention?
Well,
How did it, and how, if at all, did they differ from your impressions on the chapter level?
I was just very impressed with the people I met at the national level. Again, much like the chapter, it was a whole, a real arena of camaraderie, this time with a more expanded set of people. Was somewhat heartened to see the level of organization at the National Association level, the fact that it had a board, how seriously people seem to take their assignments as volunteers, the fact that as board members, people volunteered to travel around the country to meet in different parts of the country and whatnot. And so I was very struck by the organization. Socially, of course, it was just an incredible time because you had all these men from all over the country. And I forgot the hotel we were all at, but it was just a really, really nice time.
Well, we were at San Francisco State.
Were we?
In the dorms.
And we were in the dorms?
Yeah.
I know I didn't stay in them that much, that particular convention, but that's a whole other story. Yeah.
You don't want to elaborate on that at this
Well,
time?
it was actually the first time I had met someone that I thought was really interested in me. As we look at it just in retrospect, it was probably more of a quote-unquote convention romance, but it was still a very special week. And I remember holding hands with a man in public. That was the first time in San Francisco, walking up from the parade, which we were part of. Well, there were a number of memories of that convention. One, personally speaking, walking from the Gay Pride Parade, where we had, where we marched, and we got a very enthusiastic reception. But walking up Market Street toward the Castro, holding this guy's hand, it was very, very. It was liberating for me. The other memory was going out to Oakland that week and seeing the former Prime Minister of South Africa. I'm blanking.
Nelson Mandela.
Thank you. Nelson Mandela, who was not then the Prime Minister. This was 1990. But he spoke at Oakland Coliseum, and we were there. Those were the real permanent memories for me of that convention.
Now, you've attended most of the conventions since then?
No. I attended 90 in San Francisco, 91 in Detroit, 92 in Dallas. Then I didn't attend another convention until 98, I think, which was in Fort Lauderdale. And I've attended every one since. 98 Fort Lauderdale, 99, which was in
Philadelphia.
Thank you, Philly. 2000, which was in San Francisco again, and 2001, which was recently in. Thank you, New Orleans. How can I forget?
Can you go through those? Do you have specific memories from each one? Did anything stand out in your mind from each
Now you're
convention?
putting me on the spot.
Well, if it doesn't, it doesn't.
No, well, I would say my memories are more personal than organizational.
That's fine. This is a personal interview.
Yeah, well, okay, fine. At the risk of people thinking that I was a slut, but I probably was. Interpersonally speaking, I had another liaison with someone else at the Detroit convention. Actually, Detroit was a quite active convention for me, interpersonally speaking. But who's counting? There were three people I dealt with during Detroit. And I think it was interesting because as I look back over the years, I mean, I came out very late. I came out when I was 28 years old, relatively speaking to others. So I think I was still in the, my teenage phase or early adolescent phase. I look at that period of the late 80s, early 90s as really that period. And I was just kind of going with the flow. So I've learned not to be too self-critical about myself at that time, because I did have a good time. Detroit was 91. I think that's where Dallas, I think, was our first formal speaker, if I'm not mistaken. 91, we were still putting the final touches on, from the Long Range Planning Committee, on the whole speaker idea.
So you'd already been on the Long Range Planning Committee before the Detroit Convention?
Yes, we had met at several places, including Kansas City, where we really made a lot of headway in the Kansas City meeting in coming up with the whole speaker idea. And among the other people on that committee was Homer Adams, who would be the first co-speaker with me.
Who were some of the other people on that committee?
There was an African-American fellow who hosted us in Kansas City who was a doctor who has since moved to Connecticut.
Mark Mitchell.
Mark Mitchell? Was it Mitchell?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, frankly, he's closeted, so I hesitated to mention his name, but
sorry.
You might want to edit that. But Homer Adams was on that. I forget some of the other people. Homer sticks out because we served as speaker together.
Al Benvenuti.
Was it Al? Okay, Al was on there. And I think we did have someone from New York. Tall fellow, and African-American fellow, who is since not as active in New York anymore.
Oh, Tony Glover?
Tony Glover. Mm-hmm. And I think a little while ago, another guy from New York, very outgoing guy, had the flowing hair.
David Housel.
David Housel, yeah.
Well, so now the next year in Dallas, you became Speaker of the House. How did that happen?
I don't remember all the things that I remember the meeting, but I don't remember everything that led up to it.
You were one of the delegates from the Los Angeles
I was a delegate from the LA
chapter,
chapter, right? And then I served on that. I think I'd done that in Detroit too, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not absolutely sure. And I'm assuming that names had to be put in for nomination for that event, but I'm not absolutely sure if that's the way it went down. I'm assuming it was voted into that. And it was an honor. It was just kind of nice putting another level of organization on the House so that the delegates really felt they had a true voice in the proceedings rather than just casting their votes for, co-chairs and stuff.
How did that first House meeting work with speakers?
From what I remember, I think it worked okay. I don't remember any. I'm trying to think if there were any massive disagreements of any sort. I don't remember anything about it that way. So I believe it went fairly well. I mean, there might have been the normal glitches, like anything, in terms of going through this the first time, but I think we were very careful about counting the votes and making sure that chapters were truly eligible and whatnot, and I think people took it seriously.
Do you remember a little conflict, between the House and the board over whether the board had made its annual report to the House?
No, I don't. Do we have that?
Well, John Bush and I had it.
Really?
Yes. Anyway, it's your interview and it's not mine, so we'll go
okay.
on.
I forgot that. So you would have to ask maybe Homer.
So did you, you served, 1 year as Speaker or
1
2?
year as Speaker, yeah.
And the next year,
Next year.
well, the next year you didn't attend.
No, next year.
Chicago.
No, Chicago I did not attend. You're right. I didn't attend until 97, 98.
So
No, 97. 96 was 95 was Key West. 96 was Cleveland.
Cleveland, 97 was
So,
Charlotte.
97 was Charlotte. I attended Charlotte.
So that was the first one you attended.
That was the first one I attended after Dallas.
So had you basically hadn't had much contact with the National in those 5 years?
Right. And if I remember correctly, I was in school at the time, had a new job, and just a lot of things on my plate. So I just really couldn't do a lot of things during that period. I was getting my master's. So, yeah.
So when you came back, and one question I want to ask you too is how, if at all, have you noticed that conventions or the National has changed during your time? But when you came back after a 5-year absence, did you notice any real difference at the convention or in the House or the board? And you can answer the other question too, how you noticed the organization's changed.
I don't know if I remember noticing a decline in quality around the speakership. I think at that point the whole speaker system is still fairly good. I'm not sure if the level of conversation was quite what I had hoped, but I'm not quite sure on that, to be honest with you. Charlotte was an interesting convention. My memories of Charlotte, well, I thought, like a lot of other people, that Charlotte was a very cosmopolitan city because it had become this quote-unquote banking center. And the first memory I had coming out of the airport was getting on Billy Graham Parkway, and it didn't really get a lot better from there. I mean, it was okay, the hotel and everything was okay, but I remember being disappointed in the city. Memories outside of that?
Was Homer still the speaker at that time?
I think he was.
Along with?
Ronald Jefferson. I think it was Ron Jefferson. And I think, actually, Ron, was one of the original people on the Long Range Planning Committee, too, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Anything else you remember about Charlotte?
Yeah, that was a pretty for me, it was a nondescript time, I don't know.
What about Fort Lauderdale next year?
Well, Fort Lauderdale socially was, again, very interesting. Not that I did a lot of bed hopping, but I found it a very friendly place. Let's see, if I'm not mistaken, Fort Lauderdale, that was 98, so, I'm sorry, let me go back there, it was to 97, excuse me. Charlotte was one of the first cities where we had the explorations into empowerment. In 96, after you guys came back from the Cleveland Convention, what was formulated was, and I believe Les Everett was one of the main authors of it, the 5-year strategic plan for the organization. And and this was all in the quest to make sure we were properly utilizing Michael Smith's trust money. And so it was in the attempt to come up with more substantial programming for the national organization. And so Les Everett had put together this, Les Everett and others had put together the strategic plan. One of the key components of the plan was what was called the Multiracial Multicultural Institute, MRMCI. And I was tapped, along with Paul Hawkins of Pittsburgh, to be the first co-facilitators. And our role was to develop a curriculum to address the many isms in society that we would use with our chapters. And so at Charlotte, we had already done St. Louis in April of 97. That was our very first one. We put together this module called Explorations into Empowerment, which really was more of a, in looking back on that, we still offer that today at the Institute, but really was a way of a chapter doing a self-assessment of how equipped it was to address the issue of racism. And so we had chapter members kind of discuss internal and external forces that were either helping them or impacting them from committing to racism. And we did the first session in St. Louis in April, and I think Charlotte was our next stop. And it was the first time we had a convention audience to try it out with. And I remember we got a pretty good response from the Charlotte audience. So that I take what I said back about Charlotte, because it was very important in kind of out debuting for the first time at the national level with I should say, a broad national audience. the Institute.
Do you want to, at this point, you want to talk about some of the subsequent conventions, or would you like to go ahead and explain how the Institute has evolved over the last 5 years?
I'll quickly cover the conventions. I mean, after that, Fort Lauderdale, we did, much the same thing. We've done, some module or another at each of the ensuing conventions. They seem to be received very well. They usually served as a point of at least getting 1 or 2 invitations from local chapters to come out and talk to them. So that was good. I think the Institute took on a life of its own as really a substantial addition to the national organization, the National Association. I feel very good about that. We have since added to our training staff Nat Martin and Daniel Hall, in addition to Paul and myself. Erwin Rothenberg is kind of our official liaison to the board. He has served in that capacity for the last 2 years, and has been very, very helpful in kind of marketing the Institute within the organization. We've even done some external organizations that have asked for our services, including T-Flag, Creating Change, the Gay and Lesbian Activist Conference every fall, and I want to say the YMCA, but I'm not absolutely sure. The YWCA, if I'm not mistaken. So we're still doing those, and even though I'm not an active co-facilitator right now because of my professional responsibilities, that is something I'm very proud of being on the ground floor and helping to put together.
So over the past 5 years, you've done workshops, or modules, we call them, at conventions as well as during the year. That's correct?
Right.
And you've evolved a number of different workshops or different modules. Can you go through some of those?
Well, we started with
what you've been trying to do with each one.
Explorations into Empowerment, as I said, was really kind of a chapter self-assessment of that chapter's ability to address racism. We've since come up with 2 or 3 others. Finding the I in Racism, which was really much more of an introspective, through interactive exercises, getting people to be more introspective about how racism impacts them and what things they can do to really address racism. Of course, now that you've put me on the spot with this, I'm forgetting the other one. Explorations, Finding the I in the Mold of Racism. We've also put together a number of case studies, and I'm forgetting the title of it now, that were also designed to help chapters work on, oh man, could you hold it a sec?
Okay.
Well, I obviously have not cleared up my mental blockage here. What I do remember, we created different types of seminars that focused on chapters kind of looking as a group at their own ability to deal with racism. We also then did a second module that consisted of a variety of role plays and case studies that allowed people to examine the different facets of racism. And then most recently we developed